Page 294, Prelude in sevenths. This is a little bit of music for an ensemble. They have 4 parts. You can have more than 4 people play it because you can have more than one person on a part, but it's 4 different parts here. And I'm redoing this lesson because I screwed up the chords. I get confused on these chords, and who knows what I got on them. Good luck figuring them all out. But I'll go over each of the parts. Even though I think this lesson really is mostly for parts 3 and 4, because there they don't give you all the notes, you got to improvise. I'll look it over, it's 2 lines long. Now remember, a line is all of the staves that are played at the same time. That's 1 line. If you look at the beginning of this, you see the vertical line connects these staves together. So that tells you they're played at the same time. So it's 2 lines long. It's repeated, so whatever. The clef sign are different for the parts. It's whatever the parts say. There's no sharps or flats in the key signature. This is in the key of C major, because it ends on a C chord. I mean, it's a C7 chord, but it's still a C chord. Huh? And 6/8 time. The first part, I'm just going to briefly, because this lesson really isn't on the parts 1 and 2, but I'll cover it. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1. 1. Now measure 4 on the dotted half note. If you don't want a thumb on that because you have a thumb on measure 5 and you have a rest to come down, just use second finger on it here, and that way your thumb is available for measure 5 if you want. And I think the first part is really the melody. Now there's sort of a counter melody or a discant, if you want to call it, in the second part. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 1. 1. I'm not really covering the fingering all that much, but you could finger it however, just finger it, okay. Now part 3 I want to come back to. Let's jump down to part 4. In part 4, we have to know what the chords are, and they're given the chord names above the staves. But you'll notice if we follow the pattern in the first 2 measures, we're not playing the 7th of the chord. We're just playing the chord. So instead of a C major 7, we're just playing a C chord. C chord or a D chord or whatever, an E minor chord, a D minor, you get the idea. So in the first one, it's just a C chord. And then they want a D minor 7th. Well, it's a D minor chord. This gets so confusing. What are you talking about? The minor 7th or a major 7th and a minor chord, or a major chord and a minor? I keep going over it because I get confused. It's 2 different things. When you're talking about the chord, major is implied. We don't include it in the chord symbol. So if you see a major in there, it has nothing to do with the chord. C major would just be a C. Okay. If you want a C minor, now you got to have a little M for minor, C minor, to tell you it's a C minor chord. Otherwise, the default, you're going to play C major. Okay, the 7th works the opposite way. That's why it's so confusing. In a 7th chord, if you don't say it, you just say like a C7, then you're using a minor 7th. Minor 7th is implied, not major. So you have a major chord implied and a minor 7th implied for a C7 because you didn't say anything. So it's a C major with a minor. That would be a C7 chord. If I want a major 7th, I gotta say major, M-A-G, major. That would be a C major 7th. That's where jazz, they use a lot of the major 7ths. So part 4 isn't using any 7ths. We're just using the chords. So we're using a C chord because the major applies to the 7th. Then we have a D minor 7. Well, the D minor applies to the chord, remember, because if we want a D minor 7, a minor 7th, we don't say minor, we just say a D7. A D7 would be a major and a 7, a minor 7th. But they want a D minor here, it's here, and a minor 7th. So D minor here applies to the chord. It's a D minor chord. I'll come up here because it sounds better. And then a G7, well, that G chord, and an E minor chord. Remember, the minor applies to the chord. A7, well, that'd be an A major chord. It's got a C sharp in it. I mean, the sharp in the second part kind of gives it away too. Okay. And D minor now. G7, that'd be G major, and then a C7, C major 7. So those are and this bottom part is doing that. You're doing the 5, and then the right hand is playing the root again. So it's 1, 5, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. D, G, E. So we don't even worry about the major or minor here because we're not using the third of the chord, and that defines it. So just here. So these could be the major chord or minor chord, and they're the same. What we're doing: A, D, G, C. That's part 4. All right. Now part 3. That's where we're adding the 7th. So back to the block chords. The first one's C major 7, a C chord with a major 7th. Second one is a D minor 7th. That is a D chord, or D minor, excuse me, with a minor 7th. We're not going to go D minor, minor 7th. Remember, with a minor 7th, the minor is implied. So unless it says D minor major 7th, have a drink. But otherwise, it's just a D minor chord with a minor 7th. And G7 is a major chord with a minor 7th. G7, then an E minor chord with a minor 7th, then an A major chord with an a minor 7th, D minor chord with a minor 7th, G7 is a G major chord with a minor 7th, and a C major 7 is a C chord with a major 7th. The first and last majors have the same chord, C major 7. Okay. In fact, those are the only major 7ths we're using in this piece, the first and last major. All the rest of the 7ths are minor 7ths. You just got to get the right major or minor triad in there. Then the pattern, well, the left hand is doing, out of the thing, the whole chord, the left hand is not using the third. They're using the 1, 5, and the 7. So the D7 is here, G7 would be here without that. You might need to come down here. Stay away from parts 1 and 2. Let them have, well, part 2 is way up there, but the part 1 is here, so I don't want to get too close. Here, and then an E minor 7 is here. Then measure 5 is A7. D7, G7, C major 7. Because if it were a C7, it'd be that. Here. That's the left hand. The right hand is playing the 3rd and the 5th of the chord. Out of the whole chord, it's playing the middle notes. So it's here, then here, G major. You've got to play, remember it's playing the. And then E minor is here. I don't know how we're here. And the middle note, I gotta come down here, I'm too high. So E minor with a 7th. That's what an E minor 7. And I'm doing those here. Then an A major. Remember the C sharp. And again, the C sharp of part 2 kind of gives it away. C sharp, okay. D minor, and the 2 middle notes are these. So D minor 7, that's D minor. G7, that's G7 and C major 7. And they give you the notes there. So that's kind of the improv. That's sort of what the notes are. If you have a question, ask your teacher. I'm sure they know all about it. I get confused on the major and minor because it works opposite. If it's talking major, it's referring to the seventh. If it's talking minor, it's referring to the chord. Does that make sense or what? Even though you can have major and minor or the other, but one is default. So we don't talk about the default. And a chord, major is default. So we don't include major with a chord. It's default. You just say the chord, C. If you want anything else, you got to say it. But with the seventh, the minor is default. So if we want to see seven, minor seven, we just C7. But if you want a major seventh, you got to have the M-A-G, J, M-A-G, M-A-J, whatever it is. Don't listen to what I say. Listen to what I'm trying to tell you. That's okay. We're good there.